On an uninhabited island deep inside a Greenlandic fjord, a young Inuit woman is doing what her people have done for thousands of years and hunting for that night's family meal. For generation after generation, little changed. Then, with growing modernisation, Greenland's former colonial power, Denmark, tried to stop the Inuit from having families.
It's been called genocide. I think that's what it aims at.
Children were given contraceptives without being told what was happening to them.
The
effect of all this on the most isolated parts of this vast country has been dramatic. You get remote places such as this, 2 hours by boat from the nearest town with no road in or out, and where the population has shrunk by a third in 30 years. And you have to wonder what Inuit in settlements such as this will have to do to maintain a way of life that has lasted for centuries. Welcome to Beyond Borders. In the 1960s and 70s, as many as 4,500 Greenlandic girls, some as young as 12, were fitted with contraceptive IUDs, known as spirals or coils, without being told what the doctors, all of them men, had been ordered to do by a Danish government which wanted to reduce the number of Inuit. They were costing too much to support. The devices were too large for the young bodies. Infections and sometimes sterility followed. Now the Danish government is being sued for the damage caused. Elsa and Hedvig were at the same Danish-run boarding school when they were taken to a doctor's surgery 50 years ago.
Tau idaging itaatigut neviarsiartamaavim ammukaq nuqarlarsaatiqattani luafiortanan uqiaqarpunga tau idai ukium ataatsim angayalliuq siulli isertut anissateramik qialluti taat iseqqusaagama iseram silaarussimaru ulluman tikillu eqqaasinnaangalaq angayoqqaak aperineqanngillut aambua akuarsit.
Did you tell your parents what you'd been told by your friends?
No. She did. No. Kagmusuk. Kisianne. Kisaatialuarpaqa qallunaanaalaagaappiat utoqqatserfiissagaatigut. Taarsiippigatuttat.
What I can say there is the spiral that was used.
Aviaya Siegstad was a gynecologist who examined many of the girls when they'd become women and couldn't get pregnant.
This is the pelvis. Can you see the uterus here?
This is the pelvis.
She now runs all of Greenland's health service and calls what happened a crime.
4,500 spirals in a population of 9,000 fertile women. That means that 50% of all women in Greenland did have a spiral in those years. I was shocked by the number. Why were they making decisions on behalf of the Greenlanders? Well, it was the colonial.
But explain to me that process, that thought.
That thought is that these people are not very bright. They don't know what's best for them. I, as a civilized person coming from Europe, know what is best for the people, and because of that, I'm entitled to make the decisions.
And the decision was to fit these contraceptive devices
Yes,
to girls 12, 13 years old
exactly.
against their knowledge.
Against their knowledge, against their parents' knowledge. The parents were not informed that their children were taken to the doctor's office. They were violated. And when you're violated to that degree with a gynecological examination, you will very often have problems in the sexual life and
Reproduction.
reproduction, yes.
Greenland is the world's biggest island and is hardly overcrowded, with only slightly less than 57,000 people in total today. Yet soon after what's known as the Spiral Campaign began, population growth halved, and in 10 years it plummeted. May I be very personal and ask you, do you remember the day it happened?
Innangallunga anniarlunga nilsortoruussuusoq taamanikkultusariarlugu silarsuaqa seqimippasippo эққарсаатигасиуллеқ анаанага наппарсмиим суlisuusoq юумуйусоq налингиннарпаа ималин наливаа тэнгусуммеқаангассу qamuna uummatikku annapsoruussuunga эққааллугулу таавам иммааппис кататсинерпассуарка иммаа арфин пингас иммаа аттуумассутеқарнерпут пеққиннисақарфиммут ассут qamuna uummatига аалассассимаармат.
Both Elsa and Hedvig did go on to have families, but we've been told that contraception for the Greenlandic Inuit was encouraged until 1991. A Danish government inquiry is expected to report in 2025, but Greenland wants results sooner and has launched its own investigation.
When it's been called genocide, I think that's what it aims at. The fact that this campaign really had the measure to affect our birth rates in this country. It's absolutely necessary that we quicken the pace of this investigation and that we look into the human rights violations. And I recognize that the Danish state is not interested in that. So I think we need to move forward with that on our own.
You're trying to shame the Danish government?
Yeah, in some ways, of course. I think it is a shameful event. I think it is shameful for the women who were affected. They had their lives change in a way that's difficult to explain. They may not have thought to get rid of Inuits, but I do think that the way Inuits were viewed by the Danes at the time was that it was less civilized, and it would be helpful to reduce birth rates quite massively because we were not able to sustain that sort of living they aimed for us or wanted for us. So they wanted our society to change rapidly. So I think there is intent behind this campaign.
The harm caused is clearly still felt today, but there are younger Inuit looking for a way forward with music that brings together Greenlandic traditions and the 21st century. This is a local streaming service called Dusas.
With this, we are hoping that the children of Greenland today will grow up with a more accessible and a easier way to listen to Greenlandic music. We are documenting our history and our language. So if we look back to our ancestors, the Inuit, they used drum dance and throat singing. And we have that in the app. Also now we have the post-colonialism, where we have a lot of talented new artists who are up with the time.
It's mixed with like Greenlandic style of music with reggae, and I think it's very important that we use our own language.
Where you think about how our ancestors used to live and today how people live, it's like you can see the nature needs, a focus.
Everyone here, they sail and they go out to the nature and they hunt and they fish, and it's a huge part of our culture. So it's very important that we take care of our nature.
There's no borders, it's for the world, the music is, and that way the Greenlandic people, when they experience the music, I think they open up their mind to the world.
The sound and the atmosphere are more melancholy at this hostel for the hungry and homeless. Elsa, who's told us her story, lives in the capital Nuuk and is at the Salvation Army Hostel, which provides food and shelter for those who need it. She's helping out here the day before our interview.
We don't have a home. We have to warm up here and eat with the people like us.
He and his wife already have 3 children who've been taken into care. Soon there will be another mouth to feed.
From the highest people to the lowest, the gap is very big.
The Inuit used to be able to look after themselves. They did for centuries.
Yes.
So why has this happened?
Globalizing, new way of living.
A good way of living or not so good?
Both, of course. But the way things have turned, of course, the Europe has and USA have a lot of centuries to develop. We only had 300 years.
We're here with a man who studies the problems facing Inuit, not just in Greenland, but across the entire Northern Hemisphere.
The Danish government decided in the 60s to modernize the country and turn the traditional hunting culture with the kayaks and dog sleds into the modern world. So they closed down a lot of the smaller outlying villages and basically asked people to move into the big towns to cut the expenses of having to resupply them all the time with doctors and nurses and schools and so on. So it was a way of making it more efficient, you could say, or trying to do so.
Tell me about the social problems, the pressures, the suicide, and why.
High suicide rates, some of the highest in the world. Some of them were caused, we can see in the statistics from the modernizations. 1960s it started, and the curve is just going up. There's not a family in this country that's not affected somehow by suicide.
In 2014, Greenland's government set up a reconciliation commission to look at what mistakes had been made.
There's alcoholism, there's depression.
Yeah.
Was that very difficult for people here?
Yeah, I think initially you saw some changes, also mostly men losing their status, being hunter providers for families, and now with the modernization you lost that role for men. So for men it has been a loss, this process, but yeah, all in all it is with some positive tendencies as well.
Which takes us to Nuuk's Fight Club, trying to solve some of Greenland's social problems with diversion and exercise.
Why were there so many issues with depression and mental health and problems and suicide?
I think maybe it's
because we have been cultural different from Denmark, and we have to learn another culture who we are not aware of what it is. Many of the young people in old days could not speak Danish or English, so it was very hard for them. Also, that you maybe not feel home at your home country.
My mind is very confident, but my body is weak.
You've had a lot of difficulties to face up to in your life. This helps you handle those difficulties?
Yeah, it helps me always, even though it's hard training.
People don't have a lot of things to do, like they just stay home and being in their own mind and being self-critical about their own competence, I can say. And from there on, because of the nature is harsh and the climate is cold and it affects the mind really heavily.
Has this happened to you?
Yes, it has. At my 20s, I became homeless for 3 months, and I went back to Nuuk at 23. And it was that point of my life where I was just really down. But after 23, then I started doing boxing again. So from there on, my mental health, it became better.
One of those here is a doctor who specializes in substance abuse.
Mentally, they are able to sustain pressure in a better way, because you are on pressure when you're fighting like that, and you learn to cope by the rules, and you learn how to take the pressure on you without being too angry or to lose your mind. Because if you lose your mind in a fight like this, have to cope by the rules, then you lose immediately, and they get more robust, more able to take the feeling of self-pityness and burn it away, because you cannot use self-pity in the ring.
The Fight Club is too late for some of those in these Nuuk apartments, row upon row of soulless barrack blocks opposite the Salvation Army building, as many as 3,000 residents from a city population of 18,000. Our translator says these are the lucky ones. This one-time fisherman Jens, who's given $220 a month by the state, doesn't agree.
But always cold in the morning. The window is always blowing in. I was always working, chilling. It is very cold on morning in the wintertime.
Do they look after you?
No, only my big sister.
Inaluk, who we saw at the start, says she wants to work with those finding it hard to cope. Today, she's with her father, Eric Parlow, heading for a remote island where she'll try to shoot ptarmigan for that night's supper. It's a skill that's been passed down through the years.
I started hunting when I was just a boy. My father brought me along and taught me all the skills. How to read the sky and predict weather. How to preserve your energy to last even on a very long day hiking the mountains. The nature of all aspects of safe gun handling and shooting, preparation of the meat, and how to endure the exertion of carrying the heavy load of meat back to the camp through rugged mountain terrain. Reindeer, musk oxen, snow hare, ptarmigan, waterfowl and various sea mammals. Different species are hunted in different seasons. All our natural resources are monitored by biologists that will recommend a quota every year. It's all sustainable. We eat meat from wild animals that actually have had a real and natural life.
Hey. The males have a lot of this red stuff because they have to impress. They were sitting in pairs, a male and a female, and a male and a female.
There are mussels too, pulled from a rock after the successful shoot. Inaluk is remembering where she came from. Others on land are doing the same, with a renewed demand for national costumes.
This takes hours and hours, every single bead that's put on here.
Yeah, it took like 64 hours, and there was like 21,000 and more beads.
30 years ago, grandmothers, they have been said to children, you should not make it, you should go to school.
So they were forced into modernity, and they forgot how to do it, and now they're learning again?
Yeah. The next generation, it's learning more.
How important is that?
It's important, very much.
And this is where the seal skins are dried, inside a deep freeze.
Ay, 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 this is cold. This is cold. And look at this, look. These are already stretched. This is amazing. Seal skin, reindeer, every single bit of these creatures once they've been killed is used for meat, for clothes, for Inuit tradition.
From costumes to kitchen and Igpal, a project that hopes to get international attention by highlighting Greenlandic chefs and Inuit cuisine. We're invited to Runa and Elizabeth Peterson's home.
That's good. Yeah. I like it with soya, and then I add a little bit of roasted sesame oil.
You must have a jaw as strong as a polar bear.
Apparently.
On the menu, roasted reindeer, lumpfish roe, beluga whale salad, raw beluga, braised beluga, shrimps and eider duck soup. Elizabeth is a cook on a fishing trawler that can spend weeks away at sea. Her father gave her this narwhal tusk.
And this looks long to me, but you say this is a small one.
Usually they can go up to, people who want to buy it, they look for something that's around a little bit over 2 meters. It's not allowed to be exported.
So only people who live here can buy them?
Yeah.
It's quite light.
Yeah, it is, because it's hollow in between.
Is it?
And also it's a very sensitive tool to have. It has nerves at the end, so they can feel it around.
She finds a polar bear skin that her father dried after shooting and then eating the animal.
How big was it? Is it a male or a female?
This one was a small male. I mean, when we want to clean it, and because it's very fatty to start with, so we go sliding down the hills when it's snowing. So it cleans it and makes it soften at the same time.
But however much all these younger Inuit live in the present, their country is still trying to deal with its past.
For me, it was very much an attempt at genocide. It was very much an attempt at gaining control over not only the peoples here, but also of the land. Historically, it has been the one area that Denmark has fought really hard to ensure that the Inuit do not get control over, and it is the ground, the land, the minerals. We keep trying to find ways for all of us to be able to coexist. And that is something that indigenous people do. we're really resilient, and we're trying to always find a way to adapt to nature, and now we have tried to adapt to nation states, and now it seems that nation states need to adapt to us.
Denmark's government recently apologized for a 1950s social experiment where Inuit children were taken from their families and sent to Denmark to be brought up as Danes. The Prime Minister called it inhumane and heartless. The idea was for them to return as a new Greenlandic elite. Even back home, many never saw their parents again. Then came the contraception scandal, perhaps lasting as much as 30 years. Young Inuit are trying to find a successful way to enjoy both their ancient culture and the modern world. Yet the lives of all this country's indigenous people have permanently been shaped by the mistakes of outsiders, and they're still waiting for their one-time rulers to take responsibility.